So the Mishnah here on Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis is addressing the issue of Eidim. And the specific issue involved here is when the Eidim are signed on a shtar and they want to now claim that the signature is not valid. And therefore the shtar is worthless. Ha'edim sha'amru, ksav yadenu huzeh, we don't deny that we signed the shtar, this is our signature. Aval anusim hayinu, at the time that we wrote up the shtar and signed the shtar, we were forced to do so. The Gemara is going to see why they or how they were forced to do so. Or ktanim hayinu, at the time of the writing of the get, the shtar, we were still minors. Or a third possibility, psule edus hayinu. At that time, when we signed the shtar, we were disqualified as witnesses. Rashi says krovim, like for example, let's say they were brothers-in-law. So the Malva, the Lova's brother-in-law signed on the shtar, but then there was a divorce and they're no longer relatives. Oh, Masechet b'kubya. So Masechet b'kubya, let's say a professional gambler, is pasal midrabanan li'edus. Harei elu ne'emon. They are believed. So now we pasal the shtar. Now you and I might think that the reason why they're believed is because they were the Eidim and they're disqualifying their own testimony. But that's not simple at all, because we have a rule called Kevon Shehigin Shuvei Nechozu Magid, that once witnesses have already testified, they can't say a word. They can't come into Beis Din and say, oh, I forgot to tell you so and so. They get only one opportunity to give their edus. So why are they believed here? So Rashi, which is about 8 lines down from the top of the Yomid, Rashi says, "Sha pesha asar hu pesha hiti." We have no way of identifying and authenticating the signatures on the shtar. The only way we could do so, because no one else recognizes these signatures, is through the Eidim themselves. So who would make this shtar into a valid shtar? It's only the Eidim. And they have what's called a pesha asar pesha hiti. And they were the ones who told you that the shtar was kosher. Now they're going to tell you that the shtar is possible. Because had they said nothing, the shtar would be possible. We would assume it was mezuyaf, it was counterfeit. So this is the famous principle called a pesha asar or pesha hiti. However, their nemonus is predicated on the fact that we have no independent evidence to authenticate their signatures. So the Mishnah continues, "V'im yesh eidim shuksav yadam," but if 2 other witnesses will come into Beis Din and identify their signatures, this is their signatures, it's genuine, it's authentic, that removes the rug from under them, meaning there's no longer pesha asar pesha hiti. Pesha asar pesha hiti is an emunah that's based on the fact that we have no independent evidence. We have what's called a shtar mekuyam bebeis din, and we know that this shtar that happens to have the same 2 witnesses signed on it, is authentic, it's Makuya. Now we do a comparative study, and the other star, which had no kiyum, since it's the identical signatures, we could be Makayim the star. So we now have an independent method of validating the star. They no longer have a Peshasa Peshi. And it would seem from this Mishnah that Peshasa Peshahit there might possibly qualify as Eidos. It's not just a separate external credibility, but it comes under Eidos. And even though we have a principle of Kevon Shehigis Chuven Echozu Magid, that principle no longer applies in this case because there's no kiyum on the star. So this is the principle of Reish Lakish, which we're going to get to in Mirz Hashem, on the top of Yutes, called Eidim Achasumim al Ashtar, Havi Kemisha Nechkara Eidusan Bebezin. Which means that as soon as the star is a valid star, the testimony of the Eidim is complete. Now, what's the significance of that statement, that it's complete? We're going to activate the principle of Kevet Shigit Shuveni Choser Mag. But if there's no kiyum on the star, so that the Eidus of the star is up in the air, we don't know if there was such an Eidus or not, then the Eidim have a Peshasa or Peshit. And there's no Kevan Shehig. Now, in the Masifta, he says that there are 5 different methods of being Makayim Ashtar. Number one, the Dayanim themselves, the judges, recognize the signatures. Number 2, the Eidim themselves are invited into Bezdin, they recognize their signatures. Number 3, the Eidim who are signed on the shtar are invited to come into Bezdin and sign their signatures on, let's say, a parchment, and we'll do the comparative study. Number 4, 2 other Eidim come into Bezdin and they recognize the signatures. And number 5, if we have another shtar that's signed by the same 2 Eidim and had a kiyum, then we could be Mekayim this shtar by just simply comparing the signatures. So it's either the Dayanim, the Eidim themselves, or the Eidim will sign on a paper and we'll compare the signatures. Well, we have 2 other Eidim that testify that we recognize their signatures. or we have another star that's already Makuyim. So now again, just to review the basic principles of our Mishnah, the Eidei Ashtar who are signed on the star are now coming to testify that the star is invalid. It could be that they don't know anything about the alva, one way or the other, whether did the alva take place or not. But they know one thing: we did not sign on the star, or alternatively, we signed on the star, but we were ketanin, we were psulin. So the Mishnah says it depends. If we need kiyum ashtar from these two edim, we have none of the other four methods of kiyum ashtar are available, are feasible. It means we're totally dependent on these two edim themselves to authenticate their signature and validate the shtar. So they believed because of Peshasa or Peshid. They were the ones who made the shtar into a valid shtar. Therefore, they're the ones who are going to be believed to invalidate the shtar. Kadamayinu, Anusimayinu, Psuliedusayinu. Omar Rami Bar Chama, Lo Shanu Eliksha Amra Anusim Hayinu Machmas Momon, Aval Anusim Hayinu Machmas Nefashos Harei L'Nemanu. Rami Bar Chama says that even if we have independent evidence upon which we could be Mekayim and validate the shtar, there would still be Nemanim to say Anusim Hayinu, but only if they say Anusim Hayinu Machmas Nefashos. In other words, at gunpoint, they were forced to sign the shtar. Omale Rava called Kmine. How can we believe the Eidim? Kevat Shehigit Shuvena Chosu Magid. Eidim can only testify once. They can never add or subtract or rescind their Eidus once the Eidus was given in Bezdin. In the case in our Mishnah, where there's no Ksav Yodam Yotzim Okamacher, there are no other Eidim to witness and authenticate their signatures, they all believe that's Peshasa or Peshahit. But here, Rami Bar Chama is saying Lo Shanu. He's going back to the Sefer in the case where we can authenticate the shtar mimokamach. And the Mishnah says they're not believed. Comes along Rabbi Chami says they are believed. They're not believed to say Anusim Hayinu Machmas Momon, but they are believed to say Anusim Hayinu Machmas Nefashos. How do we reconcile that with the principle of Kevet Jehigis, Truvei Nechosur Magid? Tema says Rava, and if you'll answer me and push me off, Hani Mili. When do we apply the principle of Kevet Jehigis, Truvei Nechosur Magid? That's only Bal Peh. Aval Bishtar Lo. The fact that they signed on a shtar doesn't preclude their rights to add something or subtract something to that edus. That's not correct. Amar Shlakish, when two witnesses are signed on a shtar, that's a complete edus. So it means that according to Rava, quoting Reish Lakish, all the dinim of Kevet Jehigis apply even in the case of a shtar. A shtar is edus, but it's written edus. Which I say, it's like if a person sends, what's it called in contemporary life when you have to get a notarized, but you make a statement, then you can even testify without showing up in the courts. I'm not sure if that's true in every state and in every nation on the face of the earth, but there is such a thing. That's what a shtar is. A shtar is basically notarized edus biksav. As the moment you call it edus, then you automatically activate and apply the principle of Kevet Jehigis, Truvei Nechosur Magid. So now we don't understand Rami Bar Chama, because he said that the Edom could come by and say, Anusim Ayinu Machmas Nefashos, which in a certain sense makes sense. The guy was compelled at pain of death to sign a shtar. Now he's coming forth. He needs a good witness protection clause. But in any event, he now is saying, I was forced at gunpoint to sign this shtar. Intuitively, I would have said he should be believed. And Pasal is edus. But no, the Torah says, Kevet Jehigis Truvei Nechosur Magid. You only get one chance to testify. Elamar Rava. Rava now wants to make an attempt at refurbishing Rami Bar Chama's statement and making sense out of it. Ki itmar, aresha itmar. What was Rami Bar Chama referring to? The resha. It's ein ksav yodam yotzim makom. We have no independent method or evidence that this shtar is authentic. And the Mishnah says, we're going to give them their monas to say, Anusim Ayinu. And why? Because of Peshasa Peshahit here. On that, Omar Rami Bar Chama Lo Shanu Elek Shamu Anusim Ayinu Machmas Nefashos. Aval Amru Anusim Ayinu Machmas Mamon Ein Nemona My Taima Ein Adam Mesim Atzmarosh. We're going to undermine the nemanus of Peshasa Peshahit there because Ein Adam Mesim Atzmarosh. And this, my friends, would, I think, support the possibility that we raised earlier that Peshasa Peshahit is just giving him an extension to his edus. So within the framework of his edus in front of Bezdin, he cannot self-incriminate. The Mesim Atzmarosh. So when he says, Anusam ayinu machmas mamon, they made us an offer, a good offer we couldn't refuse. They're incriminating themselves because they had no right to sign the shtar. Okay, this is where we'll stop for today. Take this opportunity to wish you a great Shabbos. Thank you so much.